Hey, Trailblazers, this is Jason, your host of the Trailblazing Texas podcast. Before we jump into our latest episode, I've got some incredible news for you. Are you gearing up for your next big hike or backpacking trip? Well, we at Trailblazing Texas podcast have partnered up with Trekker Joe's, the ultimate Texas outfitter, to bring you something I feel absolutely special. Listeners, you of the Trailblazing Texas podcast can now get a one-time 15% off their gear purchases at Trekker Joe's. That's right. Whether you're a first-time customer at Trekker Joe's or a repeat customer like me, you can save big and hit the trails well prepared. So upon checkout, use code TTP15 to claim your 15% discount and in the process support an amazing local Texas business. So happy trails, and don't forget to tell your hiking buddies. Now on with the episode. Welcome to the Trailblazing Texas podcast, where we embark on a journey through our diverse Texas landscapes and breathtaking trails while always engaging with our amazing Texas hiking community. So settle in, tighten up those bootlaces, and get ready for the thrilling tales awaiting for you on this episode. So do you have any misconceptions about hiking in California that you would like to debunk? And so I'll give you an example for me about Texas. Is I always hear that hikers have to have hiking boots. I don't know what it is, but through the Facebook groups and stuff, it's I've got to I need to get some hiking boots. And my question is why do you think you need hiking boots?
I got weak ankles.
Yeah, that, or I'm in West Texas. I'm in West Texas. I live in Houston. It takes me 10 hours to get out to West Texas. I'm out there 4 or 5 times a year in the back country. I don't need hiking boots. And so that's something that I don't say don't buy hiking boots, but I always ask, why do you think you need them? And it's always because it says hiking.
I think if people would try, trail runners and really give them a chance. I started off with hiking boots. I think everybody does. But when I switched to trail runners, I thought, why in the world did I wear these hiking boots for as long as I did? Now, I really love the Ultra Lone Peaks, especially the Lone Peak 9 Plus, the new ones that they come out with. Oh, it has a Vibram sole on the bottom of it. I love that shoe. It'll last so much longer than the previous versions of the shoe. But the first time that I tried a zero drop shoe, it felt really weird because most of the shoes we wear have kind of like a what do you call it, an angle to it, and you're kind of moving forward, which is what the shoe does for you. But when I wore the Lone Peaks and the zero drop, it just felt so natural, to me, because it's more of like walking barefoot, And so I've not looked back since I've been wearing that shoe.
Yeah, I have the Lone Peaks 4 all the way to 8.
Yeah.
And then I was going to go get the 9 pluses. And I saw that REI had the exclusive and the smaller mom and pop outfitters didn't have a chance to sell them. So then I changed to Hoka's and I haven't looked back.
Yeah, Hoka's are really good. They've got a lot of cushion to them, which I think a lot of people like.
Yeah, nice. So what do you think makes California unique for hikers compared to other regions in the United States?
I think the weather. The weather is just absolutely beautiful in California. Now, you were talking about one of the misconceptions. A lot of people, when they hear, like on the PCT, they hear, oh, the first 700 miles, you're in the desert. What they think of is just flat desert with nothing. That's not, in fact, really and truly, I don't even call it the desert section. I just call it SoCal, because that's what you're in. You're in Southern California. up until when you get to Kennedy Meadows. I guess really the only desert, true desert, is the Mojave Desert, and that's at the very end of the quote desert section of the PCT. But the rest of it is there's a lot of water. There's a lot of tree cover and stuff like that in the quote desert section of the PCT. So I think that's a big misconception. And plus, a lot of people think oh, the desert section is going to be completely flat like Texas. But man, there are some high mountains in the desert section. And man, when you get to the top of those mountains and you can just see forever, oh, it's just absolutely beautiful. But the weather here in California is just phenomenal. If it wasn't for the weather, I would have moved out of California a long time ago. But anyway, I think it's the weather. It's just absolutely beautiful. It does here in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, about March or April or early May is basically the last time it rains. And then it doesn't rain until like November or December. And so you've got the whole spring, late spring, summer, early fall, where I mean you have no rain whatsoever. And that's kind of really what messed me up a little bit on the Appalachian Trail is because I was thinking that the Appalachian Trail was a lot like the Pacific Crest Trail, but they are as different as daylight and dark. It rained almost every day on me on
Oh
the
man.
AT. Oh my goodness. It was just, in fact, I didn't even bring a change of clothes. A lot of people, when they do the AT, they change out of their wet clothes at night, and into dry clothes. But because I was so used to the Pacific Crest Trail, which it only rained twice until I got into the Northern Cascades of Washington. It only rained twice on me on the Pacific Crest Trail the whole time. And so I guess the weather out in California, it makes it so great. And plus the heat, even in the desert, uh, if you can get under, like a lot of times it would be hot, but it's a dry heat. It's not like the sweltering humidity on the AT. It's more of a dry heat. But if you can get underneath a bush or a tree or out beneath the sun, it's very cool.
So I guess the next question was what are the best seasons to hike in California? But I guess the question should be, are there any bad seasons in hiking in California?
Just like in the high mountainous area in the Sierra, uh, you definitely don't want to go any later than like September, last of September into October, because then the snows come and it really like real bad snow years are really bad in the Sierra. But I've hiked in like December and January in the desert section, in Southern California, and it's just been absolutely beautiful. Now, it can get cold in the desert. It can get around freezing, but it warms up real quick during the day.
Yeah, it's just like, the quads are out in the West Texas desert. And at night, it's been 23, 27, 19, and we're starting to try to hike. And I'm like, what are we doing?
Yeah, yeah.
So, what would you say are some of the most iconic hikes in California that hikers should experience?
I tell you, like I said, when I first started out, the first hikes that I did was in the Point Reyes National Park. It's just north of San Francisco and the Sausalito area and stuff like that. That they're real. It's not really a strenuous hike. I think probably maybe 1,000, 2,000 feet of elevation gain in that area. but it's just so beautiful. You're looking out over the Pacific Ocean, hiking along, and then you go into a forest area, and then you come out of that forest area, and then you have another beautiful view of Drake's Bay. Sir Francis Drake was the one that came in and kind of discovered area years ago. But then the Pacific Ocean, and then you kind of look to your right, and you see the Golden Gate Bridge, and so that's a really nice area. Big Sur, south of San Francisco, is a really nice area of California. So around the coast of the Pacific Ocean is really nice.
So, what is your process to go through and find new trails in California?
Sometimes I'll go on like all trails and I'll find it. I don't depend upon the map section of all trails because I did that on the Pinhoti Trail and it really messed me up. I don't know if you're familiar with all trails or not, but it's not very reliable. But anyway, I love the Gaia. I think it's Gaia app,
Hmm.
and of course the Far Out app. The trails that are on Far App, I usually use that. And then I go on the internet and I Google and find out about the trail. But then a lot of times what I'll do is I'll go on YouTube and I'll find out, if somebody has done that trail before and I'll watch it. Like the AT. Who's the guy that I watched? A YouTuber that did the I forgot his name. But anyway, I watched him, and then also Juliana Chance. She has a podcast. Also, watched her AT YouTube videos and just kind of got some ideas about where they went and what they went through and stuff like that. That's how I kind of prepare for a hike that I'm about to take.
It's hilarious that you say all trails. Every experienced hiker that I've ever met uses all trails for the searching capability. Like, I want to do a 30-mile loop.
Right, right.
It's funny, like, I think when I first started hiking and backpacking, I used it twice, and I'm like, and again, it told me it was an 8-mile hike, and it was really like a 14-mile hike, and yeah, so I said I'm a Gaia and some other
Yeah,
apps person,
yeah.
but Todd, for example, I'm talking to him, and this was before I realized people used all trails, and he found some trail up in, I don't know, one of the Dakotas, and I'm like, how'd you find that? He goes, all trails. He goes, you don't use all trails? I'm like, no. And he goes, man, that's the best way to find new trails. You just type in kind of what you're looking for, and it gives you all these trails that are like that in the United States. And then you decide, okay, I want to hike in July. What of the regions are cooler than others? And okay, then you just go to the region. And I'm like, I never thought of that. But yeah, they're absolutely right. That is a wonderful tool to start the
Hmm.
process of research. And I had no idea. So, what are some lesser known trails that you don't think get the love they deserve?
Oh, well, just there's so many trails that are in the Sierra
Yeah.
that you can just go, just anywhere on the trail. But the John Muir Trail, I think, again, that's part of the Sierra. And also it runs along with the PCT. But the John Muir Trail, a lot of people do that before they do the whole PCT. But I think that's one of the trails that is kind of like a lesser done trail than the PCT. Oh, what else? A lot of people give like Northern California from uh, like Lake Tahoe up to the Oregon border. A lot of people don't like the Northern California section of the PCT because I don't know why. I guess because they just got through the Sierra, which is so beautiful, And so they think Northern California section of the PCT is kind of boring. But I love the Northern California section. It's very unique. It's got some tremendous old west trail towns that you can go into and discover stuff like that. But I guess any kind of trail that kind of goes off from the PCT, you can just go anywhere in California and find a trail.
Nice. So, being part of the hiking culture for a bit, how have you seen it evolve over the years in California?
Well, like I said, when I started off in 1995 with my two boys, the equipment, I don't think Dyneema was even invented by the. In fact, cell phones weren't even invented back then. So you had to worry about being on trail with your cell phone. But just the equipment, we have advanced so much in the hiking community with the equipment that we have with just lighter weight stuff. The backpacks are so much lighter than they used to be. The tents, like I said, we started off with canvas tents. Now it's Dyneema, and I think they've come out with a new Dyneema that's even lighter. The tents, other than that, and plus, I think since that movie Wild came out, they said that the people that hike the Pacific Crest Trail has just quadrupled, since then. And so there wasn't a lot of people out, doing a lot of through hikes prior to, 2015 or so.
I think for me in Texas, the education about Leave No Trace has really evolved. So I've been hiking and backpacking for probably 9 or 10 years. And I don't know if you just see a lot more people caring about the wonderful spaces that we have in Texas and
Mm-hmm.
picking up, like you were saying, I don't know if it was at the beginning of the podcast or before we started that, you always leave a campsite better than you found it. And, you hear that a lot. And I don't know when I first started that, even 10 years ago that was, I'm sure maybe it was, and I just didn't catch on, but you start to like over the years that, I mean, people really care about the spaces that we leisure in. And that's pretty exciting, and especially
Yeah.
to kind of think about where we can end up.
Well, I was always taught that as a young person. My mom and dad always taught me to always leave somewhere where you've been better than when you got there. I mean, that was just my upbringing, and so not only the trail, but I think and I think I even have a video on this about leave no trace. When you go into a trail town, you need to leave that trail town in a better shape than you were when you went into it. A lot of hikers and through hikers, they're going to a trail town, they'll go into a restaurant and they'll act like a jerk and and stuff like that. And so sometimes the people in that trail town have a bad taste in their mouth from the through hikers that acted like jerks. And so to me, that's just as important uh, to clean up after yourself after you leave and leave a good taste in somebody's the trail people's mouth than it is not throwing stuff on the ground on the trail.
No, absolutely. And, that definitely impacts our community. And for sure, people get tired of it.
A lot of times, through hikers will go to a motel, and of course, we have a lot of trash that we carry with us, and so we put it in the garbage can and everything. But I always take the garbage, when I put my trash in the garbage can, I will, take the garbage bag out of there and I'll go and put it into a bigger thing so the maid's not having to clean up after me.
Right. Yeah.
You say, well, that's her job, but it's your job not to be a jerk too.
And those are the same people that probably don't take their shopping cart and put it in the little shopping cart section in the parking lot.
Exactly. Yeah, I guess I'm OCD on that. I don't know.
Oh yeah, I'm a yeah, I get you. So, let's say Texas hikers are up in California. What kind of wildlife should we expect to encounter?
Well, I mean, there's they call them different things in different places. There's wildcats, jaguars, um, mountain lions. In California. In fact, it's really funny. When I was in the desert section on the PCT, I decided to do some night hiking because it was so hot during the day, and so I would kind of sleep during the day and then hike at night. And one day I was going down the trail, and you got your headlamp on, and you looked out in the distance, and you see, like these two sets of eyes, out in the distance, and they're mountain lions, and you just say to yourself, I hope they're not hungry. So, they're out there. And in fact, I've always heard that, they see you and, you don't even see them, and so they're watching you. There's bears. Now I haven't seen as many bears as a lot of other hikers have. I don't know. Maybe I just wasn't looking for them or something like that. But there's bears, rattlesnakes. A lot of rattlesnakes in the desert section. In fact, I saw a timber rattler up in Washington when I was on the PCT, and so
Whoa.
there's snakes on the trail and stuff like that. A lot of times, the wildlife, because they probably don't see a lot of humans. When they do see humans, they're very skittish, and they scatter, and so you don't see a lot of them. But they're out there.
A bucket list item for me is seeing a mountain lion in the Guadalupe Mountains. And I used to have a pal that was a ranger there. And I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Infinite Storm, but Pam Bell's, that's her rescue. And
No.
she had, I guess, I don't know how she got out to the Guads. And so I would always, I've been to the Guads a ton. So I would always find her and we would talk about where she's seen the most recent mountain lions. And she's in her 70s. She's cowboy camping. She's in the back country. She's involved in all the rescues and fatality recoveries. And
Hmm.
so I also talked to her about, you get the real story, not that's included in the news article or something. So we talked through that stuff. So she's retired now from the park, and now she's traveling the United States. I think she's heading up to Colorado to be with her daughter, and then she's heading back. I think she's from New Hampshire, the Whites.
Hmm.
That's where that rescue was, and where she used to patrol.
Hmm.
And so I was talking to her, mountain lion this, and okay, yeah, I'll be out there, tomorrow and see if we can see some. And she starts talking about a rescue, and I always know her as just Ranger Pam. And I go, that sounds like that movie Infinite Storm. And she just smiles and grabs her name badge and turns it to where I can see it. And I'm like, you're Pam Bills. And Rev, I don't care about movie stars. I don't care about sports people, but I
Yeah.
was in hog heaven. I was taking ussies, and I'm like, oh my God. And, and also it was
Selfie,
cool.
selfie.
Yes. Also, it was cool because, someone like that is at our national park.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
before, I don't know how many years she's been there, 5 or 6 probably. And she just completed her 300th summit of the highest peak in Texas. And that was one of her main kind of patrols. And what was neat is I posted that selfie with her and I, and just to some of these Facebook groups in Texas saying, look who's at our national park. How awesome.
Mm,
And the amount of comments that people's had, like, oh my God, she saved my life. She wrapped my ankles. She gave me extra water, the all the help that she's done. And
yeah.
so I sent her those comments, like, look what you mean to people, and I thought that was spectacular. But
Wow. Wow.
yeah, so mountain lion is on my bucket list, not up close, but maybe off in the distance.
I did see a mountain lion one time. I was hiking in the Samuel P. Taylor State Park in around San Jose, California, and I was between. Okay, there was a. I was on one side of a lake. Well, I was eating dinner, and I heard this commotion on the other side of the lake. And I looked up real quick. A mountain lion was chasing a deer down down the side of the mountain, and that's as close as I got to a mountain lion. But yeah, that was pretty interesting.
Hey, that's all that I want. And we always start hiking in the quads about 3 in the morning because by the time we get up to elevation, usually the sun's coming up, and a West Texas sunrise, nothing beats it. And like that night it snowed. We're hiking on the trail through snow, and you start to see the footprints. And so they had to have just gone through there. so
Yep, yep, yep.
so researching heading up to Colorado and stuff, there's some kind of safety tips that maybe don't really apply to us in Texas. Like, if you're doing a 14 or maybe even a 13, or you need to get up and be heading back down before noon because of the thunderstorms and stuff.
Hmm.
So, do you guys in California have any like important safety tips for hikers that are out in the wilderness that may be a little bit different than kind of what normally people would experience or need to know?
Oh, safety tips. Yeah, I think during the fall is when we start having, up in the Sierra section, we have a lot of those afternoon thunderstorms that kind of roll in, and then you have the lightning and stuff like that. Um, but other than that, especially on the PCT, when the snow melts, like during the spring and early summer, when you're crossing, there's a lot of river crossings. Again, when you first get into the Sierras, and you have to be very careful because uh, when the snow melt comes down, you've got these raging rivers that come through, and if you're crossing, it could sweep you off your feet very, very easily. And plus, they say that you need to cross in the morning because during the nighttime the snow freezes, and then when the sun comes up, then it starts thawing, and then the water comes down and goes through these rivers and stuff like that. And so when I was on the PCT, there was a couple of rivers that were, I would say like, waist deep that I had to cross. And so you have to be careful, going across there. Now, a lot of times what they say is that, you need to cross with your backpack undone, in case you get swept off, then you can just dump your backpack real quick, and it doesn't drag you down under the water. Those are some safety tips.
What about avalanches?
Yeah, again, you have to be careful. If there is a lot of snow during a particular snow year, then you have to be careful about where you go. If there's a lot of snow that is built up on the mountain, it could just give way and come down. But also, if you're in the snow and you're walking alongside of, sometimes a cliff. I mean, it can just go down. Uh, just it's very steep, and so if you slip, that's why when you're in the Sierras, you need to carry an ice axe, and a lot of people don't know how to use an ice axe,
Me.
but yeah, because you're not used to the snow.
Yeah.
But and plus you wear either crampons or micro spikes to kind of grip the snow. If you slip, and man, I went over a couple of sections that, I mean, your nerves are just on edge because one slip, man, and you're just sliding down the side of a mountain, and where you stop, who knows? And so yeah, that's another safety tip that you have to be careful of.
I think the biggest thing that I learned, so I haven't done Rainier, but I've been to Rainier, and we were on the way up to Mere Snowfields, and I was with one of my really good friends, John. He lives in Washington State. Gave me an ice axe, and he's trying to teach me how to use it. And he's like, "All right, we got to look out for avalanches and see
Yeah.
that crack in the snow. We need to cut across this real fast." And I'm like, "Can we die?"
Yeah, it's a different world, man.
And also, I had him on the podcast. Out, first the first time was about just hiking in general and stuff, and some of our adventures, and then I had him on just to talk about hiking in Washington, because I went there, and then the day passes, and how do I get a day pass? And no one's at the checkout thing. There's no pay there, but it's a website. So I was overwhelmed. So I had him on, and he made a statement that really stuck with me. That for me as a Texas hiker, when I go to California, when I go to Oregon or Washington State, spring for me in Texas is not spring there.
Yeah.
So spring here, it's probably, I don't know, March and April. Well, you're probably not going to be hiking in March and April in the mountains because the snow's still there.
Oh
And
yeah.
when you think of spring and it's time to in the mountains and stuff, for those locations, maybe it's June or July where you can kind of safely get out into those
Yeah.
areas.
I've seen it snow in July,
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
Sierras. Yeah.
And so I never thought of that, but yeah, when we as Texans are booking trips to these areas, just because it's spring here, do your research, because that doesn't mean it's spring there.
Exactly.
So now I want to kind of get into the PCT a bit, and then the Appalachian Trail attempt that you had. And I think we already talked about what triggered the idea to attempt the PCT. But if you just look back at that adventure and you completing it, how would you describe the overall experience of hiking the PCT?
Um, I always like to say it's like your first love. You know, the PCT will always hold a special place in my heart because it's in my backyard. It's what I'm familiar with, the environment and the weather and things like that. And like I said, it's my first through hike. And it was just everything was just new, and I made a lot of gear changes because I made a lot of mistakes and things like that, and I learned as I went. And then, like I said, when I got to the very end, all the emotions just kind of heaped up at one time. Uh, one of the things, especially, I watched so many YouTube videos on the Pacific Crest Trail and people who did the Pacific Crest Trail. And there's a place at the very end where you kind of go over the last climb and you go into, I think it's like 3 miles. You kind of go downhill and then you go to the Canadian border. But you can, when you get to the top of the hill and you can look out to your left, and there's a swatch of trees that have been cut out, and that is the border between the United States and Canada. And I have seen that swatch of trees. I've seen that border so many times on YouTube videos that I've watched. But when I got to that point and I looked out and I saw the border, I mean, just started weeping. I thought I've seen this so many times, and here I am, just 3 miles from that piece of wood that's sticking up out of the ground between Canada and the United States. But it's so special. It's I hate to degrade it, but it's almost like a religious experience. You finally made it.
So I'm sure you had some thoughts about how difficult it was going to be. And so was it a lot harder than you imagined, or was it kind of what you were expecting?
It was what I expected. I knew it was going to be hard. You know, I've always said, and again, I've got a YouTube video on this, but the mental and the emotional part of a through hike is a lot harder than the physical part. The physical part, uh, you know, after about a month being on trail, you get your hiker legs, and I was in the best shape of my life, man. I had lost a lot. In fact, I lost a little bit too much weight, but I was in the best shape of my life. I was in better shape than I was, 20 years younger. And so it wasn't hard physically for me, but emotionally and mentally, was really hard. I mean, I'd been away from my family for, 4 or 5 months. And so I was missing them. And I kind of played mind games with myself. I said to myself, okay, Mike, you're not going to be able to go home and see your family until you finish. And that's what kept me going. And
So with that being said, and and also the a lot of the trail, I guess you can see, like you say, it's in your backyard. Did you allow for, and were there times where your family came to visit you on the trail? Like as you're passing by? Because to me, that would make me say, all right, I'm done.
well, at the time, I was living in Palm Desert, which is, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but the Coachella Valley has Palm Springs, Rancho Mirage. It has all these communities within this kind of a bowl type area. The Salton Sea is there. You're very close to the border of Mexico. We were living down there at the time. I had a condo on a golf course in Palm Desert, and so we were real close to the trail. And so I got to, what was that? Mount San Jacinto. I got there and I called up a friend of mine I was very close to that lived close to the Palm Desert area. And I told him, I said, "Hey, Mark," I said, come and pick me up." I said, "I'll be at this particular place." And so he came out and picked me up and brought me back to my condo. And so we spent about 3 days, off trail and everything. Then a little bit further down the trail, I think when I was in, I want to say like the Lake Tahoe area, Echo Lake area, things like that. My wife came and visited me, but then past when we were past there, it was just too far for her to travel, and so I didn't see her again. Now, I would call every time I go into a trail town. I'd always call my daughter and I would call my wife just to let them know that I was okay and would
Yeah.
talk to them and tell them some things that happened the previous 5 days and things like that. That's how I kind of stayed in contact. But it was really hard, again, because you miss them. And you're talking to them on the phone and you miss them and everything. And so uh, you know, I had to disconnect after I got off the phone with them.
Yeah, she was like, honey, hold on, I got the Hallmark movie on.
Yeah,
I put you on hold.
yeah. Can I call you back?
Yeah. Leading up to you starting the PCT, how did you physically and mentally prepare, and when did that process start?
I would take I would go out and take like an overnight trip and then kind of work some things out with my gear. And then the next month, I would say to myself, all right, now let's go on a 2 night trip. And so I'd go out for 2 nights. And again, get the hiking down and get my gear down and things like that. And then I said, all right, the next month, let's try three-day trip. And then I'd go to 4 day, and then I'll never forget the time that I did 5 days out in the wilderness. And I said to myself, okay, now if you can do 5 nights on trail, out in the wilderness by yourself, you can do a through hike, because that's basically what a through hike is. It's a 5 day section. Then you go into a trail town and you get real food and you stay in a real bed and things like that. And then you go 5 more days. And so I thought, well, I can do a through hike. And then the year before I did the PCT, I said to myself, okay, I'm going to take a section of the PCT and I'm going to see if I can do that. And so I picked California Section K, which it starts at Echo Lake, which is just south of Lake Tahoe, all the way to Donner Pass, which is Highway 80 that goes across to Reno. It's about 72, 75 miles, California Section K. And I did it in 5 days. And so after I got finished, I said to myself, well, if I can do a section, then perhaps maybe I can do the whole trail. And
Yeah.
so that's how I kind of prepared myself, and then physically, I was going to the gym. I was, on a diet and things like that. And so getting myself physically ready to take on a trail like that.
So I had Andrew. I don't know if you've ever heard of the product Trail Brush, but it's a little toothbrush that fits on the end of your long handled spoons.
Oh yeah, yeah, I've seen that.
So he came on the podcast and we were talking about his through hike of the AT. And he's like, okay, let me just whisper this. He goes, it's not that big of a deal. It's like a 3 to 4 night backpacking trip between Dollar Generals.
Yeah, that is the truth, man.
And he even said like the AT, unlike the PCT, the AT, you never really feel like you're just out because there's always a town. He said through most of it, you're pretty close to a town, probably like a day's hike at max.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so he kind of ruined it for me. I'm like, oh, don't tell me that.
Yeah, it's the AT is so different than the PCT. In fact, on the AT, you kind of had your choices of where you wanted to stay. You know, well, let me see, I'll stay at this hostel or this hostel or this hostel. On the PCT, it was just mainly, when you got into Sierra City, there was basically just one place that you had to stay. And they didn't, on the PCT. There's no shelters. On the AT, there's a shelter about every, I don't know, maybe 10 miles, maybe even less.
Yeah.
And so it's just totally different.
So looking at the PCT, what was the hardest section for you? And it could be physically or mentally. And kind of to give an example, I had Coach on with Marion Outdoors, and they're up in Virginia, so I guess they're around 500 miles into the AT. And he said, he goes, that's the moment where you start to see people thinking, I'm done, or I want to quit, or that 500-mile mark. So yeah, I mean, whether it's physically or mentally, what was the toughest section for you?
PCT or AT?
PCT.
PCT, the desert section was not hard because, like I said, it was that's, you're just now starting off and everything's new, and so you're basically kind of running on adrenaline. When you go into the Sierras again, it's a different environment, and so that was not really hard, I guess. And a lot of people say that when they get to NorCal, past Lake Tahoe, they say that a lot of people quit there because they've gone through the desert section, they've gone through the Sierra, and now here's this boring, NorCal section. Again, that wasn't real hard for me. Again, I just kind of had it in my mind that, hey, it's not going to be as exciting as the Sierra, but still, you got to go through it and blah, blah, blah. As far as physically, I guess the Sierra probably was the hardest. My mileage per day dropped down considerably because of the climbs. I mean, the highest point on the PCT is Forester Pass, and it's like 13,200 feet above sea level. And, you know, but the thing about it is, on the another difference on the AT and the PCT is, on the PCT there's switchbacks that go up a mountain until you get to the highest point, and then you basically kind of stay on that on the ridge until you come down into a trail town, or you come down to a water source or something like that. On the AT, you go up this mountain, down this mountain, up this mountain, down this mountain. And it's not, they don't know anything about switchbacks. Lee,
Uh,
oh, I about died. And so what you have to do is you have to slow, at least I did because I'm old, all right? But I had to slow my pace down considerably on the AT to go up those steep grades. The steepest grade on the PCT is 10% grade. And the reason why is because they allow pack animals, horses and
hmm
mules, and even, I think I even saw some, not ostriches, what do they call them? Alpacas. I even saw alpacas on the trail, but they can't go any higher than a 10% grade. Otherwise, the horses can't travel like that. But on the AT, it's just a foot trail. Just humans go on it, and of course, humans can go on 50% grade.
Yep.
Oh man. So, and that was the hardest thing for me on the AT, is because on the PCT I would just fly up a mountain. Even though I'm in my 70s, I could fly up a mountain because of the lesser grade. But when you're trying to go up a 30% grade on the AT, I had to just have a slow pace. Otherwise, I'd have to stop and catch my breath, you know.
Yeah. On the PCT, did you ever have a moment where you're like, I'm done, I'm quitting, it's over?
uh, every day. No, yeah, every once in a while, the devil would sit on your shoulder, and say,
Yep.
"What are you doing this for? You're an idiot, You could be at home asleep, in your bed next to your wife, What are you doing?" And so you just kind of had to just, get out of here, just leave me alone.
Yeah.
Uh, so I don't know. I don't know of any, you know, definite particular time on the PCT that I, definitely was. They say don't quit on a bad day. Usually, I would go to sleep. I'd find a campsite that night. I'd go to sleep, and I wake up the next morning, and I wouldn't even think about, well, you were wanting to quit yesterday. What happened?
Yeah.
I didn't think. Now the AT, the biggest thing that happened to me on the AT, Jason, was I had it in my mind I wanted to do the AT in 5 months. Okay. And I even sat down and I figured it out, 2,196.4 miles. And I divided it up, and I said, now, if I don't take a lot of zeros, if I take maybe a zero every 7 days or something like that, I think I can finish this in 5 months and doing like 15 miles a day. I mean, I had it all on paper and I figured it out. And I said, it's not very hard. But man, when I got on the AT, it was just a lot harder than what I thought it was. And plus, oh my goodness, I broke my trekking pole the first day, and my external battery bank went on the glitch. My phone, it said, there was a warning that came up, and it said, cannot charge, get a new battery, or, some kind of
Yeah.
warning like that. I'm thinking, oh man, this is a great way to start. And so the first day I had to go into a trail town. I went to, what was that hostel? It was just like I want to say like 30 miles in or something like that. and stay there and get all this stuff fixed and everything. So anyway, I got to taking too many zeros because I was working on my YouTube videos. When I'd go into a trail town, I would take a whole day to work on my YouTube videos and then upload them. So I was taking too many zeros. And then in June, and I knew I was going to have to do this, but I flew back to California from, I forget from not Atlanta. Where did I fly out from? Oh, the Tri Cities airport in Tennessee, I think. I had to fly back to San Francisco, and I went to my oldest grandson's graduation, and my granddaughter's graduation from junior high. And because of the ticket and everything, I stayed home for about 3 weeks. Now, you know yourself, when you're on a through hike and you stay off trail for 3 weeks, it's hard to get back on trail.
Yeah.
So I flew back to the AT. I got on trail. I was really excited, and I thought to myself, you know, all of my quote tramley, they're already down the trail. They're 3 weeks ahead of me and everything. And so I sat down and I figured out where I should be if I was going to finish by September the 2nd and where I was mileage wise. And I came to the realization I was about 500 miles behind of where I should be. And so immediately I got discouraged. I got despondent and I thought, hey, I'm never going to be able to finish. So why keep hiking? And so I just got bummed out and I started thinking about the end of the trail rather than just thinking about, every campsite that I need to go to. And I just got bummed out. And so I said, I'm going home. And so I quit, went home.
Yeah.
But next year, I'm going to start back where I left off in Parisburg, Virginia. And I'm going to finish next year.
So, kind of to take a step back, what made you decide to take on the Appalachian Trail after you've already completed the PCT?
Uh, it was either that or the Continental Divide Trail.
Mm-hmm.
And I figured the Continental Divide Trail was too much like the PCT, and I wanted to do something, as totally opposite of the Pacific Crest Trail as I could. And so that's why I did the AT. I kind of, in the back of my mind, want to do the Triple Crown, because that's what everybody does.
Yes.
And so I don't know if I'm going to live long enough to see it done, because I heard somebody say one time, I don't have many more shopping days left till Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
I'm reaching the end of my usefulness here on this earth, but I just decided it was either between the CDT or the AT, and so I thought I'd do the AT, and if I can get finished with that, then I might think about doing the CDT.
It's funny you say that. I have a friend, Kyle. He did the Continental Divide Trail, then he
Uh huh.
just did the Appalachian Trail.
Uh huh.
And he goes, I did the Continental Divide Trail knowing that the Appalachian Trail is not going to compare. And he said it didn't, not at all.
Right. Right.
And then he goes, like, I've done two. So if you do one long hike, you're a hero. If you do two and you don't do three, you're a loser. So now he's going to go next year to do the PCT.
Yeah, exactly. That's the way you feel, man. And that's what everybody said to me, on my YouTube channel. Oh, Rev, you gonna do the CDT next? Well, I got to finish the AT first.
Yeah. Yeah. He said that was the CDT was a beast.
Yeah, yeah, I've heard
Yeah.
that.
So what were your hopes going into tackling the Appalachian Trail? Were you kind of like chasing something, like we were talking about earlier, kind of just answering that call that we have for the challenge? What was it?
Yeah, just answering the call of the challenge. The AT, the East Coast is different than the West Coast, and so I'm going to challenge, take a challenge to do it. Like I said, for some reason, I wanted to be able to finish it in 5 months because I didn't want to spend so much time on a trail because I've got other things to do. I've got a
Right.
family. A lot of these people that do Triple Crown, they do things like that. They're not married. A lot of them don't have careers. They don't have children. They don't have grandchildren. They don't have any responsibilities and things like that.
Yeah.
And so it's easy for them to spend 6 months, 7 months on a long distance trail away from their family. But that's just not in the cards for me. I miss my family. Like like I'm at the point now where almost every year I've got a grandchild that's graduating from high school.
Yeah.
And, and so I can't plan anything before June.
Well, so as you were mentioning earlier, you didn't stop, you paused the AT. What was that moment like for you when you came to the realization that, yeah, it's time to go back? And that wraps up another exciting episode of the Trailblazing Texas podcast. We hope you enjoyed the episode today and stay tuned for our next episode where we will pick back up where we left off and guarantee to uncover many more hiking gems and share many more tips to enhance your experience on the trail. Until then, happy trails and happy hiking.